Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Woke Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, joined as always by the Sultan of Steel, Nick Sutherland from Myndfit. Nico, how are you, mate? You've got your, what's that hat? You feel like you should be smoking on a pipe, sitting on a rocking chair, a few kids around you, regaling them with a story of old.
Sounds wonderful. This is my
What kind of
typical
story?
life.
What kind of story would you tell the kids as they were gathered around?
It'll be a story of two men going to the Gold Coast
Well, I like it. Keep going.
with hopes and dreams and goals
Stars in their eyes.
and stars in their eyes. And it's an epic journey, a saga, a tale of triumph and adversity, and then not quite triumph.
So it's a tragedy.
It's a tragedy.
Are you talking about, like, if this was a movie, this would kind of be like the Titanic or the Romeo and Juliet of a golf trip movie?
Yeah, there was no room on the floating door for you or I.
No, we both drowned.
We were in the band. We were in the band as the ship went down.
Yeah.
No,
So
well, listeners would have heard the Matty Pitt episode that we recorded while we were there, and that was halfway through the 4 round event. So I'd won the first round, Hass had won the second, and we're flying high. And then I played well the third. Well, we both played well the third round, and so yeah, with 1 round to go, we were sort of sailing in, and then the top four in the rankings, you, me, and a couple of other blokes, played together at a. It was a tough course. She was tight. She was
it
tight
was, it
course,
was, yeah, it was.
and yeah, our mate did a Steve Bradbury and just sort of you and I started tripping over each other, and he slid up the inside and took the win.
Yeah. Well, we were pretty flat, weren't we? In the
We were.
post
I'm still.
in the post
I'm my ego still is blaming your back for the whole thing.
Yeah.
But
So my ego is blaming my back as well.
so Ryan and I obviously we're leading the team event as well, and so we were 3 from 3. We were first and second, and then our team was winning, and yeah, we're on a high. And I turned up to that round thinking, all right, it's going to be Hass and I sort of battling it out, and then yeah, you started dropping to the ground like you'd just been shot by a sniper.
Oh,
And
look, wasn't that dramatic, was it?
no, it was very dramatic.
Yeah, I think it was,
It was
wasn't it?
it was high drama. It was high
Yeah,
drama.
yeah. So no, we got to the course. It wasn't through a lack of preparation. We got there and warmed up, and then something happened in the warm up. I felt great hitting the ball good, and then we had about 20 minutes, half an hour till the tea time. I was grabbing an egg and bacon sandwich and talking to a few people, and whilst I was walking around, I'm like, oh no, what's this? And then a few swings out there, and yeah, and the back went. Which I've had many back issues in the past, but it's been fantastic for over a year now. So
Mm.
it is what it is. And then Nick lost his way a bit because he saw his main rival there in me was just not barely able
Yeah,
to swing the club, and there you go. But all in all, we had a fantastic week, didn't we?
we did. I lost by a shot, so I missed the birdie putt on 18. You made yours, which was fantastic, but it was fruitless pretty much. But I,
It's the
I,
pointless
I,
birdie.
I slid mine past and yeah, lost by a stroke. So they
So,
say you got to lose one to win one. So that's the one I've lost, and we're going back next year,
so
bigger and
Nick and
better.
I are just going to be fueled by vengeance for the next 12 months until
I'm
we
gonna,
get back
I'm
on the
gonna,
Gold
I'm gonna,
Coast.
I'm gonna hold on to this. Time's not going to heal this wound. This is
Yeah,
gonna fester.
forget everything that we've said on all the episodes of this
Yeah,
podcast. We're going to
throw it all
fly
out
in
the
the
window.
face of that. We are going to be reactive. We are going to hold on to anger and hatred. We're going to let vengeance fuel us. We're not going to be equanimous. We're going to be definitely attached to an outcome. And
I am,
the keys of our happiness are in the hands of that outcome.
I am switching off my emotional intelligence for the next 12 months.
Great.
Um,
Just give it a rest.
Imagine that. Imagine if you just got bitter and twisted and
Yeah.
getting real angry. Oh, that'd be funny. So yeah, that was a great time. But I do have something to share. We released the podcast, and I had an email from an SGA member,
Is
and he
this from
said,
so last week's episode? So for those who haven't listened, they've jumped
yeah,
on during our
yeah,
golf trip up on the Gold Coast last week. We had Social Golf Australia founder Matty Pitt, who's been on the show before, maybe an episode in the 30s, which we highly recommend. We've got so much good feedback about that episode. So we had him on last week to talk about things, and you've got an email.
yes, from James. So shout out to James for getting in touch. The subject is keep doing what you do. I just wanted to say thanks and good on you fellas for putting this together. I just listened to your latest podcast as I am an SGA member and can truly relate to what was discussed. It was great to reflect on how I can be better and even more grateful for what I have. So it said a couple of other nice things as well. But thanks, James, for reaching out and that to us.
Yeah,
And
thanks, mate.
great to hear that you took something out of it.
Yeah, I'm all warm and fuzzy when I hear that kind of thing. It's it's great. You know, you never know in any of the work you do, but especially a podcast as well, because I've listened to so many podcasts. And I've never really thought about reaching out to who I'm listening to and that kind of thing. But some of what I've heard has had such a profound impact on me and definitely shaped who I am as a human.
I had a client during the week. I'm keen to get her on as a guest, actually, because her transformation has been amazing. And she was listening to what's that, Hugh Van Cuylenberg's podcast. He does one.
Not sure.
The dude from the anyway. And she was listening to their podcast, and they get great guests on that. But she could. This is where she's evolved to. She's listening to this, and she can hear the distortion. She can hear the black and white thinking. She can hear the this should have happened, that should have, we shouldn't have done it. And she's sitting there. She said, I just want to reach out to them and say, I think it'd be great for you guys to get Nick on as a guest, because she said they've got such a big audience and they're influencing so many people, but they're doing it with this language that's not beneficial. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I was just like, oh, well, I said, well, feel free to send them the email. I'll be happy to go on there. But but it was just that reaching out to the podcast people. It's like, do it. Send them an email. Tell them what you think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. I remember reaching out when we first started the centre. I reached out to Gabor Mate and a bunch of others, and I think he replied to me. I didn't get much back, but he replied to me, and it's like, you never know who's going to write back. I remember Matt now, who I've worked very closely with for years, and we run these courses together and everything. And a lot of people are like, how did you guys meet? And it's like, he literally was sort of in the early stages of starting his practice and everything, and he must have been reaching out to different rehabs and whatnot. And he just sent me an email just saying, hey, this is me, this is my story, this is what I'm doing. And I would get quite a few of those, and I would always reply to them. I'm like, oh, it's so good, keep doing what you're doing. And then for whatever reason, I'm like, cool. And I'm like, hey, whereabouts are you based? We should catch up for a coffee. It was just sort of weird. Then obviously we catch up for a coffee. And then I think he came on my podcast at the time. Then over time, this thing evolves that we've created now with all these students all around the world. And it's like, it all started from this, him having the guts to just reach out and send an email, and you never do know where it's going to lead, and you're never going to, you're either not going to get a response or you might get something back and it's really valuable to your life. People aren't going to reply and go, oh, fuck off, stop contacting me. That's maybe what we think is going to happen, but it's worth a shot.
Shoot for the stars. And if you miss them, at least you'll be up there somewhere. I don't know.
It's like when we first connected and we had this mutual person that we knew. Yeah. And he's like, oh, you just got to bloody meet Nick and hang out. The amount of times that people told me, oh, you've got to meet so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, whatever, and I took it with a grain of salt, or I met them. And I'm like, why the fuck do I need to meet this dude? You know what I mean? But then, we caught up for a coffee, down in Mornington. And then I remember having a coffee, and I kind of remember going, I don't know if I'll ever see that guy again. He was great. I had a great chat with him and whatnot. And then all of a sudden, this, I don't know if it's fate or destiny or the dharma, but things just start to unfold and happen, and we're this active participant in that.
And it all just unfolds in front of you. I saw this, this, I don't know what you call it. I read this and really loved it. Utopia is on the horizon. I move 2 steps closer. It moves 2 steps further away. As much as I may walk, I'll never reach it. So what's the point of utopia? The point is this: to keep walking.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And it was amazing, because the 3 toxic beliefs we talk about in the Myndfit program. One of those, I must be perfect, and everything must be perfect, and live in this utopian world. And that's such a human trap to fall into, is desiring it all to be amazing. But it's unreachable, and thankfully so. It'd be horrendous if we ever finally reached utopia.
And I think both things are deleterious to our experience as being a human being. Yes, if we reached utopia, and we've spoken about this before, but it's like we lived in a world where no one critiqued us, everyone loved us, everything came to us easy, and there was no challenge, we'd go insane very quickly. And the other side of that is people like, well, if I'm always going to be 2 steps behind and never going to reach it, then I'll give up the pursuit of this utopia. And then
welcome to existentialism.
Yeah, welcome to nihilism and existentialism. Yeah. And I've spent periods there, when I have sort of been through this journey, not even so much when I was a drug addict or that kind of thing, but even after that. And I would go through these periods of sort of looking at religion and God, and then dismissing that, and then seeing that we're just a blip on the radar here for the blink of an eye in the scheme of the universe, and nothing inherently has any meaning. And then you look at that rationally and logically and go, yeah, that makes sense. But then if you live that, it's a terrible existence. It's like, I can't find any value in anything. Then there's no motivation to engage with life. And it's a really tough path.
I've been listening to a lot of Ram Dass lately. I've been driving from
lately, the last couple of years, mate. It's been a while.
Well, weirdly, I'm only up to episode 67 or something on the Be Here Now podcast. So, because I need to digest it slowly, I need to sit with it. And, but he was speaking on one the other day about
you need to sit with your rammed ass. I was trying to hold that in so bad. I was trying to hold that in so bad.
You're such a teenager sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I know. It's the best. Keep going.
It's so Keep going. And it made me. It led me to think. It didn't make me think. It led me to think. It stimulated some thinking around this hilarious paradox where, how we say, we call this woke blokes, and talk about being conscious and aware and awake and whatever. So, and when Stu came on, mate Stu came on the podcast, he spoke about old Nick and new Nick, and old Nick had the blindfold on, and it was just, yeah. And then new Nick had the blindfold off. And so if you look at it that way, people with the blindfold on are free they're free. You can see them. They're just like, just they're free from the responsibility of doing the work, and they're free to be mindless in their way of going about their earthly lives. And it looks fun, and you're like, I used to go, I wish I could put the blindfold back on. I wish I could just take a holiday, take a break from this. But that lasts like 2 seconds and goes away. But then on the other hand, those with the blindfold off are free from, they're free to be mindful. They're free to experience things on a deeper level, I think. So for me, it's sort of blindfold on, more surface level, blindfold off, a lot deeper, and having, these more profound experiences. Neither's right or wrong. No one should or shouldn't be in any of those places or positions. Everyone's on their own journey. But it just brought to mind this hilarious paradox. They're both free, but in such contrasting ways.
Yeah, 100%. And you're right when the blindfold comes off, because I've had moments as well where I'm like, I want that thing back on. Like, this is too hard. I'm so aware of my own bullshit and other people's bullshit. This is terrible. But it's like, it's like when you're seeing through the matrix, it's like you can't kind of go back. It's like once I know I'm in the matrix, that it's like I can't just pretend that I'm not anymore. And you're right. You are free to experience things at a much deeper level. But I've sort of found in my balance as well, you spoke about me being an immature teenager at times, is that I've kind of found I'm still trying to find it, but it's like this balance as well. Or even though, let's say, the blindfold's off and you see things very deeply and you start to like see, let's say, some more, universal truths and how things work, but they're not taking that too seriously. Because that's where I got into a bit of a problem. Everything became a little bit too serious in that, like,
That's very
everything was.
common. That's very common in Buddhism. There's people start becoming apathetic because they've gone from one end of the spectrum to the other. They've gone from caring so deeply about everything is so important to then learning about this concept of surrendering and letting go. And so they do that, but in a way that makes them. They talk about detachment, but they do it um, in a way that creates that disconnect where what we're detaching from is our desires for things to be different. We still want to be here and connected and engaged and feel and part of it all, but without riding the roller coaster so much.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I still think about this every day, but it's like, why am I here as a human being? What is it to be human? All that kind of stuff and these deep questions. But then I've realized that the actual good stuff is like, the moments where I'm hugging Melissa or spending time with my son, or when me and you are up on a golf trip making stupid jokes and pissing ourselves laughing. Like they're the beautiful moments in life. It's cool to think about the bigger stuff and all this existential stuff, and it should be thought about, I think, but not at the expense of the human moments which make up our life as a human being.
Well, it takes me back to that Trevor Hendy episode where he said, I used to think I was a human being having a spiritual experience, but now I'm a spirit having a human experience. And that's the game to play. It's like I was literally thinking about this yesterday. I get a little frustrated sometimes in being a human and everything that comes with it. Like, oh, really? Do I have to deal with a builder today? I just want to sit and just experience the peace that's going on and just be in it's sort of and then I laugh and I'm like, oh no, being human is the lesson. It's the learning. It's the curriculum. Ram Dass spent many a year trying to escape the curriculum and escape being human and just get high and stay high. So yeah, it's about that. For me, it's a constant acceptance that I do have to pay bills and deal with all this little surface level stuff. And there's part of me that would just much prefer to sit in the depth of it all. But
You got to
you
play
can't. You
Nick.
need to.
You got to play that
Yeah,
character.
and I love the character of Nick. I do, and it's thoroughly enjoyable. But it's also too dramatic for my consciousness as well. Sometimes you're like,
Yeah.
I really got this, and I got to build a fire trailer, and I got to do this, and it just seems a lot of it seems unnecessary for my soul evolution. But then I've got to go. It's exactly what I need for my soul evolution.
Yeah. It's so interesting when you say that. And I think we've spoken about something similar before, like how we have we share a lot of the same views, but have kind of opposing natures, to a degree. And so when I think about that, like my consciousness or my soul, it's like, like I get bored.
Should hear this voice inside my head. I'm gonna let it out. It's like, well, I was never a smackhead.
See what I mean? Opposing natures.
And you're like, well, at least I could open the fucking door and walk
Yeah.
outside.
Oh
So
shit.
it was so interesting just to hear that voice pop up, and it's like, can I? Can I? I'm like, nah, nah. And I'm like, this is good.
Oh god. Oh god. Just think, when I go to open the door and leave the room, we're like, yeah, I think I struggle with
Freedom.
this.
So long, sucker.
So my
Uh,
so then my what it feels like now is my consciousness or my soul. It's like my lesson's a bit different. So my lesson is like, hey, go and sit outside for a while and observe things and what's happening and that. Because I can easily get involved in the doing. That's so easy for me. It's like, oh, there's another project to do. This is happening and that's happening. It's like no problem at all. But that's slowing down,
yeah,
which comes more naturally to you. And the other side of it is your schooling or your curriculum. Mine's kind of the inverse of that.
yeah, and I'm very um, my nature is very connected with just being. So I need to sort of ramp up in the doing side of things, and that's why I think that's why your business is where it is and mine is where it is. If we look at it from that perspective, because it's in your nature to go, yeah, bang, da, 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 da. I'm happy just to sit here and be and just exist and feel very content and fulfilled in that. Whilst there's another part of me going, no, we've got to do. Remember, we've got to get this out to the world and help reduce suffering. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, all right, let's
Yeah.
go.
Isn't it interesting? It's like both, because for me, yeah, what my mind says, it's like, hey, you're living here for X amount of years. Let's do fucking as much as possible, and then package it together. But that's both of our natures, I think, or both of our souls, let's say, that energy is trying to move towards seeking balance, but it's just balancing out in different directions.
It'd be great to learn for those that want to play around with the idea of reincarnation. It'd be great to learn what number incarnation this is for the both of us, and how many times have we been here before. But I feel, for me, I think the being is I'm trying to reduce. Ram Dass spoke about this beautiful story yesterday, and he said there was a king and he had this butcher, and the butcher didn't have to sharpen his knife. Never had to sharpen his knife. It was always sharp. And the king said, "Butcher, how do you do it? How do you work in a way that it's been 19 years you've never had to sharpen your knife?" And he said, "Well, I am with it. It's just he never the knife never went into the bone. It went around the bone, and it was sort of." No, that's the so there was no butcher, there was no meat, there was no knife. There was awareness that those things were there, but they were all the one thing. And then he had a music stand maker, and he said to me, "You make the most exquisite music stands. How do you do this?" And he said, "Well, I spend the first 5 days fasting to forget that I'm working for a king. And then I spend the next 5 days fasting to forget that I'm a music stand maker. And then I'm stumbling through the woods and I happen to cross a tree and I find it in a music stand. And so all I have to do is discard all the stuff around it." And so he's not, it's about removing what's not necessary or the impurities or whatever to reveal what's there. And I find that's my ongoing tug. That there's this tugging towards just, let it all go, just wander off, just go and sit somewhere and have people come and chat to you and have people wander off. And that's so attractive to on a soul level to me. But then the human aspect of me is like, no, got to get up, got to feed the dogs, got to go to this, got to sit on the pot, got to go and create this content, got to write policies and procedures, and got to interact with clients. And so, yeah, it's that interesting, and I have to very mindfully shift out of one into the other.
It's like I could so imagine you, Eckhart Tolle. And when he had his, big awakening or whatnot, and he like lived on a park bench, I don't know, for like 6 months or something, and he'd just sit there and just observe, and then someone would sit next to him, some might talk to him, he'd talk to him, and they'd go away. I could imagine you doing that.
Easily. I'm just spoke about another
Like
story
Forrest
about
Gump.
this.
Remember Forrest Gump? People would come and sit next to him and he'd tell stories.
That's all I have to say about that.
That was pretty good.
Oh, thank you, Jenny. This other story he spoke about just quickly. There was a rabbi in Russia, and there was the Cossacks with the police, and the rabbi was going for a walk, and this big Cossack was like, "Where are you going, Jew? Where are you going?" It's like, "Wherever God takes me." And the Cossack was like, being a wise guy, being a smart ass, right? You're going to jail. Come with me. And then the wife came down to jail to get him out and pay the money or whatever. And she said, "Why are you being a wise guy?" He said, I wasn't. I just said, he asked me where I'm going. I said, "Wherever God takes me." I couldn't imagine I was going to jail. And that's it was just this, I'm going wherever I'm meant to be. I'm going wherever I end up. There's no strive or struggle. It's just yeah.
And it's so interesting, isn't it, that kind of shows that society views that as something very odd and very strange. I remember I went and saw this shaman once. A funny story, got recommended to me. Dude like lives in suburbia in this house, and he has the demeanor and the look of like someone who's like middle management at a bank or something. But then he opens the door in full like shaman gear, and he has this whole room with this shaman stuff. But yeah, he was telling me that he many years ago kind of had this, what society would term as a psychotic break. But he just suddenly just snapped and just sort of went, "Oh, I don't need anything. I literally don't need anything." And he just lived on the streets in Melbourne, just telling people that he loved them. And, if they're open to having a hug, he'd go and just give people a hug. And he did that for like a year or something. And he said he got put in jail, like he can't even remember how many times, because people were like, "Oh, this dude's saying he loves me and offering to give me a hug," and just kept getting put in jail. He goes, "I got punched and beaten up like a whole bunch of times." And then after like a year or so, he was like, "Okay, I'm meant to, I think, come back to reality, as much as I can and serve people in a different way."
Well, that's reintegrate, and that's where I landed a few years ago. It's that I feel I'm needed here as a bridge between that unawakened model and just sort of getting people into contact with that softly and a little bit. But funny you mentioned that story, because yesterday again I was thinking about the aversions we have to things that are different, and if somebody is outside the norm, and society, the norm, deems them as being psychotic or in psychosis or whatever. Imagine someone going to court and defending themselves, and he says, "Well, why can't I exist on a different plane to you? Why can't I? Why do you fear me existing on a plane where I'm fully conscious and aware? Why do you need to throw this label of psychosis at me? And this, because it suits you, it helps you to put me into perspective, but it doesn't help me. It doesn't. It's all for you. It's not for me."
No, because you stop doing what you're told, and it's like, and maybe, and this is, I've met people with genuine psychosis who need help and need to be taken away somewhere and helped. But then what we're talking about, and I've seen it so many times, is just people that are living in a different plane of reality, like you say, and it's outside of the frameworks that most of society has and that we're told. And so it's seen as in some way not right, not okay. And that's because it's like, hey, I don't want to now, sign up and have this mortgage and pay taxes. I'm happy to live on the street and act differently. I'm not going to do what I'm told. And then it's kind of like, well, from a bigger point of view, they don't want too many people like that, because that might all of a sudden become attractive to people. And that's why people do want to, disconnect and live off the grid and live up in the middle of nowhere in Queensland. Anyone.
But on the other hand, I also don't feel I gel with people who are too woo woo and are too, because a lot of that tribe can get very pushy as well. There's still a lot of ego
Oh,
in that
mate,
in that tribe.
you use the word tribe, and that's the perfect word for it. It's tribalism at its best. It's any movement or group of people with a set of beliefs. Once that group gets big enough and popular enough, it's like it's the group versus everybody with opposing beliefs, right? Which is completely and utterly ego based. But then once
Yeah.
that group gets big enough, then the group starts splitting up and attacking itself in different factions. It's like, wow, you should be raw vegan and not cook things with vegan. No, fuck you, raw vegans. And then they attack each other. And the spiritual people do it as well. It's like, oh, you think
Yeah.
Archangel Metatron's in? It's Archangel Michael. Bullshit. And they fight each other. And I've seen it, man. I've been doing the healing. On my business is the Center for Healing. I've seen this shit. And I can't stand it. And it's one thing that we do now. Like we teach these modalities. And one of the things that we will never engage in is, if people start to, shit on other people's stuff and all that, I always remind people, I'm like, hey, we're all here. Remember this? We got into this because we're all trying to help people. We all got into this because we've normally been through something. We've seen suffering. We want to alleviate that unnecessary suffering in other people in the world. And that doesn't happen by us attacking each other. Now, we can have constructive discussions around, hey, how can we evolve this or make this better, or which direction do we need to move in? But it's too easy for humans, especially online. Online has taken that tribalism element and ramped it up by 100, because now I can talk to people without it being face to face, and there's no consequences for my words. And it saddens me. I'm not going to get stuck in my sadness, Nick, but it saddens me when I start to see that, and it's not good.
It doesn't sadden me because it all makes sense to me, and this is something that I've never felt normal. I've always felt on the outside, and I've always seen the world a bit differently. And
you're not normal.
and whatever.
I concur.
Thank you. And that's the seats that I sit in all the time. Everything just makes sense to me. It all is happening magnificently and wonderfully, and nothing is out of place. And we've moved up to Agnes. Yeah, I may struggle with it on a human or ego level, when there's adjustments and I've got to change models, or it's something new comes along and I've got to figure it out on that level. But underneath all that, sitting back from that, it's even that's happening exactly as it's meant to, and beautifully. Then we move to Agnes, and you meet these people, and it's a bit of a hippie community. There's lots of woke people up here or whatever, but the woke tribe is horrendous. There's the Facebook group up here is just full of toxic. Just it's so impure, and there's a couple, I've bumped into, and I've got to really be careful of not trying to say I'm pure and they're not pure, or I am this or I am that, or I'm better. It's not about that. It's a resonating energetically, vibrational. You can feel it, and there's a lot of people vibrating out of alignment, I think I'll put it, and their head, their ego, their monkey brain is leading the charge, but they're convincing themselves that they're vibrating on this pure level, and they're not, and they're actually causing a lot of harm, and they're falling into all these traps. And it's just so interesting to watch, because there's this illusion. That's what there's this illusion of, we're all this, and you walk past and you're like, oh, that's interesting. You can't see that.
Yeah, we were obviously involved with different groups and stuff through COVID down here, and it got interesting to me as well, because once again, it's this tribalism thing. It just always happens, and it's like, and I was very against the government recommendations and all that, but I didn't have to. But what I was seeing is people would jump on and go, hey, all the people causing division, they're wrong and we need to take them down. It's like, but you're being divisive about the people who are causing division. And then I'm like, but then if I chime in and tell them they're wrong, then I'm causing division. And it's like, it's this stepping back, stepping back. And it's like, there's certain games that we choose to play in life and certain places that we can put our energy. And for me, there's certain fights that I think are worth happening if it's in alignment with my values and something that I believe is part of my path. But 95, maybe more, 98% of those battles and things that are very enticing to step into, it's far more beneficial for our own mental and emotional health to step backwards.
For me, it's all about how much is my ego involved in this right now, and is that person's ego triggering my ego and going into this wrestling match? And is it my ego's opinions? Is it my ego's beliefs? Is it my ego's values that it wants to impose on this other person and create that what did you use before?
Division.
Division. Or am I coming at this from a place of equanimity, a place of love and compassion? And that's where I'm very mindful. All right, I'm going to involve myself in this, but I'm only going to do so from that place of love and compassion. And it may, on the surface, look like Nick's being controlling and Nick's doing this, but if I'm setting a boundary for somebody, or if I get on social media and I don't even bother on social media anymore. That's I used to, and then I was just like, "There's no value in this because they're not.
There's really not.
They're not asking for it. They're not ready for it. They don't want it. So, So I'll get involved, and only when I've assessed where it's coming from within me.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I found with those when I used to, whether it was online or whatever, and want to get in those debates whenever. Pretty much every time. I don't think there was a time that the ego wasn't involved. And I checked in and I'm like, close my eyes. And there's this little gremlin in there going, get him, let's make him wrong.
Get involved.
And then it's like, and like you said, it's a wrestling match then. Two egos wrestling each other. And you think you're going to find some sort of peaceful resolution? By definition, it's impossible.
It's
But then you get the woke community as well, having these like spiritually enlightened arguments, and it's like for those who haven't watched, I haven't watched him in a while, but JP he used to do hilarious piss takes of the woke community, very funny comedian on YouTube and whatnot. And you'd have like the spiritual people having a debate. So I can see that you're projecting right now, and that's okay because I'm equanimous about that. And they're going back and forward. It's like, oh, for God's sake, just say what you want to say.
It's all
maybe just step away for a bit and get your third chakra into alignment, and then have a bit of a meditate, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss it. And it's just like the exact same thing as someone going, "You're a wanker, you're wrong," but I'm using spiritual language.
What's coming to mind for me when I listen to this is it's about balance. It's there's tension. We need tension, but there's looseness, and it's that being in alignment again. It's the client I was talking about earlier who said I'd love to be on the podcast one day. The version of her that turned up was very far out of alignment, and because her ego had been the executive decision maker and conditioning and her nature and her karma and all these contributing factors. It's no one's fault. It just was how she was at that point. And she's been so courageous and diligent and keeps turning up. She keeps turning up, and she's got herself into this space where she has the most wonderful awareness and the most beautiful, and I did this and I fell into this trap, and I, the ego got involved there. And so I went and apologized to my husband, and because I threw him under the bus unnecessarily, and he's like, am I on candid camera here? What's going on? And and she's had a friend of 35 years reflect how much she's grown and evolved, and it was just and she said she said I feel like my heart is my home.
Oh,
and to me that's something that a client says that's it's not common, but it is common in terms when a client reaches a certain level, there's this common theme there, and it is that I've come home, and that's what we call it. I've come home. I'm back in alignment. So I'm integrated again, and I have a healthy ego. I'm in a healthy relationship with my ego. I am present. I am free of so many of the attachments I once employed. And yeah, I'm in this space, and I'm just like, just wow.
Yeah, that's you said the word balance, and that seems to be a real head and heart balance, because most of us are just living up here all the time in the mind, and we're locked in there. We don't feel like there's any other place to be. We might come into the heart for brief moments when we have a beautiful moment with our partner, see a beautiful sunset, have some sort of experience, but then we pop back up into the head and we just ruminate, we overthink, we're obsessed with it.
Analyze this, analyze that, analyze it.
100%. And what your client's describing then is, it's like this journey home, back into the heart. And then we use the mind for life situation, because the mind's awesome. Like, we bloody sent people to the moon. The human mind did that. He created the plans and did all the math and all that kind of thing to send someone to the moon. It's really incredible, but we don't want to live there all the time.
It also sent millions to a gas chamber as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's the way I look at it, like the mind is one dimension of our existence, and there's all these other dimensions as well. So there's nothing wrong with the mind, but it's not ideal to spend all of our time on that dimension, because we're missing all the other ones.
What's the quote? It's the mind is a terrible master, but a wonderful servant, or something.
Yep.
So, and that summarizes what Myndfit's here for, really, is because, and our minds are so powerful. They're so powerful that we can send millions to a fucking gas chamber, or we can send a tinfoil hat on people to the moon, or did we?
Or we can build an atom bomb to destroy things, or we can build cities where millions of people live.
So this is why I keep coming out of my just being, and I have to get back into doing, because I want to take this to people. It's important to me to take this to people to help train their minds in a way that creates that balance and frees them to exist and be here now in that heart space, but using the mind for good, not evil, if we want to use binary language around it. An untrained mind can just cause so much harm and havoc. So I think it's imperative that we do this training, and that's
100%.
why we're not really doing therapy anymore. We are doing neuro training or cognitive training, because it's just important. Switch notes for a minute. I had this hilarious epiphany yesterday.
Oh yeah.
It is, and I'd love to unpack it a bit with you. It's easier for me to love a perfect stranger unconditionally, or a client unconditionally, than it is for me to love Emma, my partner, unconditionally.
Of course. Of course. But like, if you really got to know that stranger, spent a lot of time with them, then you would find it more difficult to love them.
No, but I get to know my clients very well. If we do a 12-month program, and then maintenance, I've got clients that I've connected with for years, and there's no judgment of them. They're coming to this space, and we're holding this space, and never ever have I judged a client, but I do judge Em, and I do fall into all of these hilarious traps. And for me, that's the karma is my relationships on that level. And I just adorn them. I'm like, amazing ability and capacity to hold space for people without judgment. But then as soon as Em does something, I'm like, that's different. The ego gets so involved in my relationship with her.
Yeah, well, we're getting challenged on a day-to-day basis, and the ego doesn't like to be challenged, because the ego just wants it all smooth sailing. It wants to be right and everything to go nice and smoothly. and we don't have that
It's looking for
relationship.
itself in her.
Yeah, it's like, can you please fit all of my little patterns and my idiosyncrasies and all of the experiences I've had that made up me, and not stimulate anything that feels any more uncomfortable? But then we would speak about, the theme of this episode is like, look at your life and what curriculum you're needing to take. And, life will show us pretty clearly the lessons that we need to have. I remember this literally the other day, similar thing to what you're talking about. I was driving home. I think I was just out getting a coffee, and this will happen a lot, but I think let someone in, on the road. And, I love a good wave and whatnot. And they gave me this wave that I really felt their gratitude. And I waved back, and I started tearing up. It was like, I'm just this basic, human interaction. So I think something in me, when there's interactions, I'm like, we're okay. It's all past the division and humans being weird. I'm like, we're all trying our best. Yeah. And then I get home. And then I get home and Melissa's like, oh, I need you to take Tommy. I'm doing blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake. And I'm completely taken out of this really beautiful state of gratitude and love just because my ego's been challenged.
Yeah, it's so inconvenient that you do it. It would be much preferable for me. And I literally, so when we were on the golf trip, Em went to Melbourne for 3 days, and she didn't really speak to me. And then she got in touch with me when she wanted to know something for her dad. And then when I was driving home, I got a billion phone calls off her because she was wanting something for her son. So I still, my ego was like, well, I'm not the priority here. And I was having this really interesting time of it. And on one level, I was like, there's no problem here. Everything's okay. I know that she loves me. I love her. Everything's fine. But on another level, I'm like, why? Who doesn't message their partner for 3 days? It was so far out of my conditioning and my understanding, my models. It was such a different model to the model that I employ that it was spinning my cogs, and I was having to work really, really hard on it. And what I noticed is distortion started coming in because there was attachments. I want her to call me. That she should be calling me. This is what my beliefs is what a relationship is. And so the lens started changing, and I got home and we spent 2 days with her dad here, so I didn't really get to talk to her on this level. But then I got home the other night and I just held her shoulder and I stared at her. I'm like, just give us a sec. She's like, what are you doing? It's like, just give me a minute. I'm like, flicking my eyes around. I'm like, and she's like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm just changing all the lenses. I'm looking at you through these terrible lenses. And I'm like, there you are. Oh, hi, honey. Oh, it's been a while since I've seen you. Oh, hi. And I literally had to do that. And then she just gave me the biggest hug, and everything was okay. But I had to really intervene and get involved.
Yeah, it's that the area of your life where you can, in other areas, it's so easy for you to be a quantumist and sit and observe and be the being.
Effortless.
Yeah, but then, and so my mind's crazy. So I know my ego's involved pretty much all the time I'm stimulated, because I'll be with Melissa. And this happened not long ago. And one day I'm like, I just bloody need some time. Need some time to work through what I've got, blah, blah. So she what I'm saying is take Tommy out and give me some time alone. Then a day later, she'll be out with Tommy and come home. And I'm like, oh, you guys were gone a while. Jeez, I was getting a bit bored and lonely. And then she goes, do you hear yourself? I'm like, yeah, I do. It's crazy, isn't it? So it's like, But we've got to recognize, you got to recognize like you did and go, man, I've got this distorted lens going on. I need to break the pattern, right? It's like I need to circuit break this thing so that I can reset.
We call it a mental rep. So it's catch, laugh, rewind, change. So have the awareness that you've got this going on, and then take a breath or laugh at how irrational your ego's being. Can you hear yourself, ego? Melissa asked you, can you hear your own ego?
Oh, and we laugh. There's lots of laughter in my ego. Don't worry about that.
And then you pull yourself back, pull yourself out of that destructive, attached, I must, all that sort of judging, criticizing and condemning. and then change the narrative, change the lenses, change the pathway that you're traveling on, and get back into your heart, and this is where it's important for me to exist with you.
And that may also look like, maybe me, sitting in another room later on that day or something like that. And then me, because when I remember before this, in previous relationships and everything, I might realize that I was wrong with something. Oh, yeah, I was wrong, and acknowledge it, but then just, don't say anything. And that might be me then going downstairs and going, hey, babe, earlier today, yeah, I was wrong. And this is why. And, I realized that. That's another type of circuit breaker as well. Because what I've seen far too often, and I've seen this in previous relationships, when those circuit breakers don't happen, and that happens through, a lack of awareness on one or both parties, then days, weeks,
or pride.
months.
The ego really struggles to be seen as imperfect, and if you've been wrong and then you're imperfect, the ego will internally process and go, "Yep, we're wrong. Yeah," but it's not externally gonna offer
Yeah.
that to the other
Or it
person.
was like, maybe, yeah, I shouldn't have said that, but I'm justified in saying that because of these three things that happened over the last 2.5 years to me. and so without those circuit breakers, time goes past and those lenses just become, we normalize it. And, I've met, a lot of men and women who are just like, they're so bitter towards their partner, this person who they have to spend, my God, the majority of their life with. And it's because they haven't had these circuit breakers in place. They haven't had difficult conversations or laughed at how egoic they are or how egoic their partner is. And it's become a temporary, I guess, state has become traits in the relationship now and the normal. And then that becomes harder to circuit break the longer that goes.
Totally.
That's
I
why
think
people end up going to the couples counseling or doing these, big things that in the future.
Well, I think next episode we'll do an episode on relationships, because we've got a lot of people at the moment coming in, and we don't do couples counselling. We work under the philosophy that the health of the relationship is determined by the health of the two individuals co-creating that. So we work with the individuals, and once we start taking and it's funny, we're doing some marketing at the moment, or playing around with it. And I'm being asked all these questions. What is Myndfit? Why is Myndfit here and everything? And I described it like we're just an optometrist. We're just helping people to change their glasses, change the lenses they're looking through. So when we work with the individual and change the lenses, and the lens is there because of the attachments. So when we help them to start letting go of their attachments, it creates this massive ripple effect into the relationship, and their authentic self can be in a relationship in their heart space, and the dynamics of the relationship will change as a result of the work that the individuals are doing. And so there's a lot of this coming in at the moment. So I think if we can spend some time doing a podcast and offering an overview or an insight and getting your thoughts on it as well. And neither of us are perfect. Neither of us has the perfect relationship, or so we're not coming at it from that perspective. But there are some real fundamental things that need to happen. And one of them I was chatting to a client about was, doing the work. We have to turn up and do the work in those moments, and the eye behind the eye and everything. And as soon as you start focusing on what everyone else is doing, you stop doing your work, and you think, well, this is all the work you should be doing and that you aren't doing. And we're neglecting ourselves, and that's where we start to come out of that balance. So we need it's not a constant hyper focus or hyper diligence or hyper awareness. It's just a very gentle awareness. But we need that on our relationships too. We need to employ that. We get out what we put in. And a lot of people go into a relationship, I've done my work, and now I just expect this relationship to flourish. And it's like, well,
no.
Are you sitting down and connecting? Are you talking about things? What's happening when these two sources of energy come together? What's the chemical reaction here? What's the energetic reaction? Is one very closed off and afraid and environment? The other one's like, please open up, please come out of your shell, and that's going to send that person. So I don't know. I'd love to spend some time with you, sort of pulling it all apart for people.
Let's unpack it. There's a lot to it. We'll get like a little teaser before we wrap up. But yeah, I was literally talking about this with Melissa yesterday, and it's people have a version of this word, but it's work. Like you got to work at it. It's a relationship's an entity. It's a very important entity, and it takes work. It's like
breathing. Breathing is work.
Mm-hmm.
It's work.
It's like saying, and people park it. They go, okay, I'm in a relationship. Yeah, we're married or whatever. We're in this thing for life. That's done. It's like me saying, I saved $100 when I was 25 and put it in my bank. All right, money's done. I'm finished now. It's like you got to work at these things.
We're going to go to a couples counselor and do the work for an hour a week. We're going to go to that appointment, and we'll do the work in that appointment, and we'll go home and fall straight back into.
And what we'll do, we'll go to that appointment and find out all the ways that you're wrong and you're the problem in the relationship. Yeah. We'll get you fixed, and I'll be validated as right, and then we'll be fine.
Yeah. So I'll get what I want, and
you'll be made wrong, which you are.
Yeah. So.
All right, let's wrap it up, Nico. I think we've both got to be off. A takeaway for me as that discussion kind of evolved, for the people listening, just have a look at your life and go, if you're listening to this show, you've probably got the blindfold off to an extent. You're aware of what's going on, and your life will show you where your curriculum is right now. Whether it's relationships, money, work, your health, or whatever it is. Look at these things not as something that you're bad at or struggle with, but maybe it's your next area of study.
And look at the tribe you're hanging out with as well. We are some of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So step back and evaluate your tribe, observe your tribe without judgment, but just observe, the language that's been used, and are they caught up in the drama? Are they sympathizing with you? And that person's a bastard. Just to sort of step back and evaluate your tribe as well.
Essentially, check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Mm-hmm. Sister.
All right. Peace out, everyone. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Nico.
Bye.